Hello everybody, I'm Kamalea, welcome to my channel. Today I'm going to talk about Hearthstone a bit. This is a little bit of a different video than usually. It's not really about the footage in the background, that is just some games I played with my Jade N'Zoth rogue. Instead, what I did over the last couple of weeks was that I logged all the games of Hearthstone that I played. And I did that for 100 games. These games were played in December and January. December and early January. And they were played on rank between 20 and 10. And what this is going to give you is kind of like an idea what the meta actually is at the moment. What kind of decks you run into. And how often, because what I find is that you usually, if you don't track these things, and you just go by your feeling, you will overvalue the decks that you hate playing against or don't enjoy playing against, like, whatever that is for you, and don't notice those that you don't mind so much less. And to get around that bias, I just logged every game I played. And what I logged was, is it an aggro deck, more a combo deck, or control deck, or something else? And whether or not those games reached turn 10. And then, this is less reliable data than the rest is, because I only started doing that later on during those 100 games, is I would predict who would win, starting at turn 8 and then later going down to turn 6. So what are my findings? Aggro is king. Nobody cares about anything but aggro. No, really. Of those 100 games, 65 were against aggro decks. So 65% of all decks out there are aggro decks. And I mean really aggro decks. The biggest one is Warrior with 43. So that's crazy. The typical Warrior with lots of weapons, lots of pirates, and very few variations in that. The rest were a mix of mostly warlocks, a few hunters, but mainly it's pirate warrior. 65% of all decks are aggro, and of those, the vast majority, over half the decks I played against, over half the games, were against aggro warrior. The next second biggest group was the combo deck, mainly because of one deck, because 19%, so 19 games, 19% of my games were against combo decks. 3 of those were Miracle Rogues, and the rest were Miracle Jade Druid. Everybody is playing Jade Druid. That's pretty much the only combo deck out there. The next group is Control or Control-ish decks, 14%. Those were mainly the biggest single deck in there was Dragon Priest, followed by Reno Lock. And in this group I essentially put every deck that wants to play a long game. So all Reno decks, everything that had like Cthulhu or N'Zoth in it, Control Warrior, stuff like that. Dragon Priest and Reno Lock are the most common in there, in the games that I played. And the last group was Other, which was 4 decks, where I couldn't for the life of me figure out what they were supposed to be. They were just strange. So, like one Paladin who played some Murlocs, but not enough to be a Murloc deck, and those were just strange. That's probably people messing around, or I don't know, no idea. So those are the percentages: 65% aggro decks, 19% combo decks, 14% control decks, and 4% strange stuff. And of those games, 21 reached turn 10. So 21% of all games, of the 100 games I played, reached turn 10. To put that into perspective, it's important to know what kind of decks I played. And I played only decks that wanted to play long games. So I only played stuff like Dragon Priest and my N'Zoth Rogue, stuff like that. Very, very late game based decks. Decks that did their best to get to turn 10. All in all, I won far more games than I lost. So in December, I played up to rank 10. And in January, I think I got to rank 15 or something like that, and then dropped down again a bit because I was starting to play strange stuff. But yeah, that's generally the thing. With very, very, very slow-ish decks, control-y decks, not really out to kill the other guy as quickly as possible decks, only 21% of my games even saw turn 10 coming. Now, what does this mean? What's the conclusion for me out of this? Well, the conclusion for me is something is, I think, terribly wrong when you have one deck being more... I mean, we have a card game with 9 classes and theoretically with potentially multiple decks per class. And we don't only have one class being played more or almost 50% of the time. That one class is being played with only one deck in round about 50% of the time. And that's crazy. I think that just shouldn't happen. Whether you like the aggro game or not, some people like the faster aggro games, and that's perfectly fine. I don't like them, but that's just personal preference and taste. But I think it's a very bad thing game design-wise when you have so many different classes with so many different cards, yet there is one that is just so dominant and being played by, well, so many people. Obviously, these numbers will be different for different people, because 100 games, while that's not nothing, it's not like I played 10 games and then made up a statistic out of that. 100 games is a substantial number, I'd say. It's still a small sample size, so 1,000 games would probably give you different statistics, or if I do the same thing with another 100 games, I'll get slightly different statistics. It also depends on where you play, like America or Europe or Asia. I don't know. Probably things are a little bit different there. Also has to do with your playing habits, at what times of the day you play. For me, it's honestly very mixed, because I have a a very strange schedule at the moment, which gives me free time and in various times of the day. So yeah, it was very mixed for me. I cannot really tell you at which times I played the most. But still, this is bad, I think. Another thing this tells me is, if you're building a deck, don't really bother with 10 mana minions, because in 80% of your games, even if you draw the card, it's going to be a dead card, because the game is going to end before turn 10, which makes 10 mana minions or 10 mana cards completely pointless. And that's sad, I think, because, well, N'Zoth, Cthulhu, to a lesser extent Ysera, but yeah, including Ysera, including the 9 mana minions, there are a lot of interesting and very late game minions and cards that just won't see any play. And I'm just guessing, if I would play an aggressive deck myself, if I played an aggressive warrior or an aggressive warlock, I'd guess that the number of games that reach turn 10 would go down even more. Because then I'd also be playing a deck that wants to end the game quickly. And then it would just, I don't know, maybe go down to 10%. And that's just crazy. I think there are reasons for that. I think one of the reasons why the pirate, warrior, weapon warrior, aggro warrior, whatever you want to call it, is being played by so many people is, well, it's very strong. That's one thing. But also it's quite a cheap deck. It's cheap and easy to make. You essentially need one legendary, which is Patches. And apart from that, you can get away with not having any other legendary in that deck. You can put some others in, but you don't really need to. And especially for the low-ish ranks, I mean, I don't really consider rank 10 to be low, because the majority of people play on lower ranks. But still, it's not legendary rank. So, yeah, I think you get what I mean. In those ranks where the majority of people are, if you want to build a strong deck there, you are free-to-play player, you will probably go for the aggro warrior, because it's a strong competitive deck that is very cheap to make. I think that's one reason, but still the other reason is it's just a strong deck that is easy to play, and you can't really make that many mistakes with it. And yeah, you win games, and apparently for many people that's enough. Personally, I think that is quite sad. I would, for me, I think in a perfect world, you would still see aggro decks, and you'd still see a substantial number of aggro decks, because aggro decks are important, and they are a part of the game, and it's good that they are a part of the game. But I think no single deck type, deck style, or play style should be so overrepresented. And even if it shouldn't be just one specific deck from one specific class. And I think that's a bit sad, because I think this game has potential for more. Now, the last thing that I did, I'm going to tell you the percentages, but take them with a grain of salt, or with even more salt than the rest, because I just started doing that during my playing, so they have far less numbers for those, and also it's a bit difficult to say. Anyway, what I did was I started predicting who's going to win. I started doing that at turn 8, and I had almost 90% prediction capability at turn 8. The numbers for those were rather low, because of course I started doing that about halfway in, and there were quite a number of games that didn't reach turn 8. So I couldn't predict during those. And I started putting it down to turn 6, predicting whether I'm going to win or lose. And there I was a little bit lower. I was about 70-something% right. But I did that for maybe the last 20 games, so that's not really a number that's in any way reliable. So yeah, those are my findings. Way too much aggro. Sadly, way too much aggro from the same class with the same deck. And a bit of sadness that so few games actually reach turn 10. And yeah, that's just, I think, bad from a game design standpoint. It's bad for deck designing, because there's so many cards that are essentially unplayable, not because they're bad, but simply because in a world where the majority of games are over before you reach max mana, there are tons of cards that you essentially cannot really play. And that's, I think, not good. So yeah, that's my takeaway from this. I'd like to know if you have had similar experiences, maybe even on different servers. I'm playing on the Europe servers. Yeah. Or you're also only running into Pirate Warrior or like half your games. And how often do you get to turn 10? I'd be interested if other people have similar experiences. Until then, have a good time. I'm Kamleao.